Everyone, did you watch the State of the Union last night? I haven't watched it yet. I know, I've seen the highlights. Have you seen the highlights? Nancy Pelosi has a temper tantrum and rips up Trump's speech after he snubbed her. So you can go watch. I'm not going to play it right now, but the link is in the description. This is the 37 seconds that you'll want to see. I'm going to watch the rest of it. I'm interested in what's happening in the United States. I think that there's lots going on in their politics, and it's an immensely entertaining show. If you've got time to watch it, it's worthwhile. But if you don't, I'm glad you watched this show. Okay, so moving into Canadian politics and money laundering and all of that interesting stuff that's happening. Well, the RCMP, Douglas Todd is tweeting, quote, the RCMP uncovered an underground bank in Richmond, BC, Silver International, that laundered as much as $220 million a year and possibly $1 billion, reports Gordon Hoekstra. An underground bank, quite the concept, no taxes. No taxes. There's lots of money. The Vancouver method is a way to clean money and send it back to China to create more drugs, to sell more drugs, to create more wealth, and then send it back to China and do it all again. So that's a proven mechanism happening in Vancouver. And these dark banks, these private banks, are a part of that. That's how part of the money is laundered, right? Like, oh, you need a loan? Well, I've got lots and lots of money right here to lend out at interest. But regardless, here's the Vancouver Sun reporting on this specific case. Bank seeks $1.2 million mortgage repayment allegedly linked to BC's biggest money laundering case. This was published on February 4th. That's yesterday. Today's February 5th. The Bank of Nova Scotia has demanded payment of a $1.2 million mortgage on a West Vancouver home allegedly owned by a key target in an RCMP investigation of BC's biggest money laundering case. The bank filed a petition in BC Supreme Court on January 22nd seeking an order that the owed mortgage on the property at 2738 Chelsea Court be paid immediately and that the mortgage be set as priority over other interests in the property. The West Vancouver home and mortgages is listed in the name of the target's niece, Yan Jia. Sorry if I've got that wrong. But the BC civil forfeiture claim filed in BC Supreme Court in March 2019 alleges the home is owned by her uncle, Paul King Jin, and that it is the proceeds of crime and has been used to launder money. Jin and his niece have denied all allegations. Jin, named as a key suspect in the RCMP's e-pirate money laundering probe, was arrested on February 24th, 2016 for possession of proceeds of crime, money laundering, and running illegal gambling operations, but was not charged according to court documents. The threshold for proving a civil claim is lower than for a criminal conviction, a balance of probabilities rather than beyond a reasonable doubt. E-Pirate is considered BC's largest money laundering investigation and uncovered an underground bank in Richmond, Silver International, that allegedly laundered as much as $220 million a year and possibly as much as $1 billion. Police allege clients of the bank include local drug traffickers, high-roller Chinese gamblers, and members of Mexican drug cartels, according to court documents. In its filings in January, the Bank of Nova Scotia states that under the mortgages and personal credit agreement, the $1.2 million, I'm not going to read all that out, was owed as of January 6th. The bank is seeking full payment plus interest that is accrued after January 6th. I scroll down just a little bit. In court filings, the forfeiture office stated, quote, Mr. Jin is the beneficial of true owner of the Chelsea Court property. Ms. Jia acted as a nominee owner or owner of convenience on behalf of Mr. Jin with respect to the Chelsea Court property. So this is just one example, $1.2 million, a drop in the bucket, really, of the larger problem of inflating our real estate market with laundered money, with, criminal money. So that's not good. That's not good for your average Canadian. That's not good for the everyday person, right? That artificially inflates things. And what that does is, even if your job is a good job, that means you can't afford your housing because the housing has outstripped, it's become decoupled from the employment of the area, right? Like, oh, well, if you're going to spend $500,000, I'm going to spend $700,000. If you're going to spend $700,000, I'm going to spend $900,000, and so on, right? Until you have $1.2 million family homes, which is just crazy and wild. Moving on to harder Canadian politics, less money laundering, more politics. The Roy Green Show is tweeting, more Canadians would consider voting Tory under Peter MacKay than any other contenders. So Ipsos looked at the general public and said, And they said, this guy's more electable. And I don't necessarily believe them. I don't necessarily think that at all. But here's global news. More Canadians would consider voting Tory under Peter MacKay than other contenders, Ipsos. And I just wanted to get to, I guess I didn't highlight this one. Well, it doesn't really matter. Here's the one I did highlight. And it says the opposite. Peter MacKay is becoming his own biggest obstacle to winning the Conservative leadership. Okay, I'll prep this a little bit. Hold on. Here's global news. They say more Canadians would consider voting Tory under Peter MacKay than other contenders. Leadership candidate Peter MacKay might just be the Conservatives' best chance at getting more Canadians to vote for the party. That's according to a new Ipsos poll conducted exclusively for Global News that asked Canadians about their views and recognition of 4 candidates in the Conservative leadership race: MacKay, Aaron O'Toole, Marilyn Glado, and Derek Sloan. Ipsos asked 1,000 Canadians, both Conservative voters and those who say that they vote for other parties, under whose leadership they would consider voting for the Tories in the next election. A total of 40% pointed to MacKay, compared to 31% for both O'Toole and Glado. I scroll down. You can really see that Peter MacKay is benefiting from his level of visibility as a cabinet minister over many years, because when you ask both Conservative voters and even Canadians generally, obviously his awareness is pretty far ahead, said Daryl Bricker, CEO of Ipsos, in an interview with Global News. Awareness at this stage really does lead to support, not just among Canadians generally, but also among people who say they would vote Conservative in the next election. So this one's saying Peter MacKay is the guy just because he's a household name. Everybody knows him, so he's the one that they vote for, and that really does kind of translate. And this one is, he keeps messing it up, right? They're both posted on February 4th. Both of these articles were published yesterday. Okay? So this one, National Post, Peter MacKay is becoming his own biggest obstacle to winning the Conservative leadership. And for the record, I don't think it's really valid for Ipsos to poll all Canadians when the leader of the party is decided by the party members, right? So like, while I understand what they're trying to do, they're trying to start running the next election, right? Oh, if this guy and this guy and this guy or this girl or whoever, they're trying to start that conversation, probably to start vilifying them as racist, but whatever. That's what they're trying to do, but they're jumping the gun, right? Like, they have to let these people choose, these people being the Conservative party members. So, and having news articles that say, I mean, it's totally opposite what they're both saying, right? It's definitely Peter MacKay. Oh, Peter MacKay is getting in his own way. Whatever. Anyway, it seems funny to me that instead of targeting Conservative voters to see who's the most viable leader, they're looking forward to the next election. Carrying on, back to the article. It seems increasingly that the greatest threat to Peter MacKay's leadership bid is Peter MacKay. The presumed frontrunner in the campaign to replace Andrew Scheer as Conservative leader has stumbled more than once in recent days. Yes, he has. On Tuesday, he issued a statement clarifying his position on whether he'd favor moving the Canadian embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, after a report in the Post-Millennial said he would not commit to a measure that is currently Conservative Party policy. When he was pushed on the issue, he said, quote, "It is a very complicated subject, and calling for the move would be presumptuous." MacKay's ambiguity led to a pile-on from sections of the party who are less than thrilled at the prospect of him running away with the leadership. Quote, "The Conservative Party membership vote should be respected, and so should Israel," said New Brunswick MP John Williamson, who is mulling his own leadership bid. I scroll down. The problem is that if it has always been his... Oh, okay, sorry, I should have read this part. MacKay felt compelled to spell out his position. He said, as defense minister, he had made clear a threat to Israel is a threat to Canada. Quote, "It has always been my personal view that Jerusalem is the undisputed capital of the state of Israel, and that is where Canada's embassy should be, and under my leadership will be located," he said. The problem is that if it has always been his personal view, why didn't he just say that when asked? The party's membership voted overwhelmingly in favor of the move at its convention in Halifax in 2018. A smoother operator would not have allowed any daylight to emerge between his views and the party's membership positions. A day earlier, MacKay's team tried to portray their man in a sympathetic light, inviting CTV into a child advocacy center that helped victims of abuse, an organization the candidate co-chairs. MacKay talked about the new level of understanding, compassion, and civility he has divined since leaving politics. Quote, "I'd like to do the politics a little differently," he said. Where have we heard that before? Moving on. The reporter asked him if he felt a tweet sent out by his account on the weekend, which criticized Justin Trudeau for using $875 in Liberal Party donations for yoga sessions, was evidence of a new civility. He agreed it was not, and said that he had not had the opportunity to vet the tweet before it was sent out, at which point his media handlers shut down the interview while the cameras were still rolling. If you're the leader and somebody sends out a tweet, I mean, either retract it or do something if you disagree with it. Don't just sit there and let it be up and then get gotcha'd and then agree with the reporter. It's just, okay. It's just so weird. It's so weird. Like, it seems inept, right? Like, it seems like he didn't have a plan, and that's odd. I mean, maybe it's not odd, but he was a cabinet minister, right? Like, he was a high-ranking official in previous governments, right? Back to this. It turned a good news story into a bad one and pointed to a lack of leadership. McKay has more experience than anyone on his team and should have insisted on finishing the interview, even if the heat was rising. The misstep adds propellant to the smoldering anyone but McKay campaign that is building inside the party. Where have we heard that before? This is just like it's like we're in a washing machine watching the same election over and over again. And sometimes one bit sticks and sometimes another bit sticks. It's just, what? Anyone but Harper McKay? Ugh. Back to this. I've spoken to a number of influential and vocal conservatives who offer a variation of the following. McKay's a good guy, but he cannot be leader. He's not that competent, not that bright, and doesn't do the work. Now, I just want to caution you on this. These aren't quotes, right? This is the reporter freewheeling here. A variation on the following. Like, if somebody said, well, who knows what somebody could say to get somebody to say that he's good, but he can't be leader, or he's not that competent, or not that bright, or doesn't do the work. Like, there's so much room for misunderstanding and, oh, I didn't say that, I meant this, and whatever, that this is just not responsible reporting, in my opinion. If you've got a quote, use the quote. Don't freewheel like this. That's garbage. Okay, back to the article. Crucially, they say that he is not that conservative. The assumption in the media and amongst pollsters is that McKay is electable and could add 10% to the party's current 30% floor of support. That assumption is flawed, his opponents argue, because 10% of the party's base will not show up to vote for McKay. His election as leader would blow apart the Conservative coalition. They contend it's like 93 and Kim Campbell all over again. It's built on pillars of sand, said one McKay refusenik. It's a weird word. Scroll down a little bit. The case for McKay was bolstered by a new Ipsos poll of the general population rather than just party members, which suggested 40% of voters would consider voting Conservative under his leadership compared to 31% for O'Toole and Marilyn Gladot and 29% under Ontario MP Derek Sloan. Now, I just want to point out as well that having the general population surveyed is just ridiculous. Okay, and the last story this morning, and I guess I'm kind of on time. It's going to be a little long. 680 News is reporting about the coronavirus still. A new case of coronavirus in BC is expected to become Canada's 5th positive case once confirmed. It's still unclear how the woman in her 50s contracted the virus. So what that says to me is it's not travel related. Usually it's like, they were traveling in Wuhan and that's the reason they have the virus. Don't worry, there's no chance of infection, right? That's what they've been telling us. But it seems that is, well, if she doesn't know how she got the virus and she's in her 50s, that's concerning, right? Yes, it is. I was looking to tell you about the government flight yesterday. I said I didn't know the status. And generally, if I have a question at the end of my show, I don't like that. I like to answer the question. So I wanted to find out the status of the flight. And CTV News had the answer this morning, 8:16 a.m. Circumstances beyond the control of Canadian government delay Wuhan evacuation flight. And well, here it is. It says Canadians stranded in a Chinese city under quarantine have been told a flight that would bring them home has been delayed. Miriam Lusha, sorry, I've definitely got that wrong. A 25-year-old student from Quebec who is in Wuhan says she got an email from the Canadian embassy about the delay. She says the flight that was scheduled to leave early Thursday morning local time is now expected to leave in the evening. The email says the delay was due to circumstances beyond the control of the Government of Canada. Foreign Affairs Minister François-Philippe Champagne has said the plane would wait in Vietnam for permission from Chinese authorities. Ottawa has said that more than 300 Canadians have asked for help to leave Wuhan, but the plane has room for only 250 passengers. So they're trying to get people out. And my question is, if China has quarantined Wuhan and surrounding areas up to, I've heard above 50 million people, I've heard up to 100 million people quarantined. I don't have confirmed numbers to show you. The last confirmed numbers I saw for quarantine was 50 million people. If there's a quarantine of 50 million people, that's not something to take lightly. I think it's really strange that governments around the world are coordinating to bring people home from the quarantine zone. I think it's really odd. And I was thinking about this on Twitter and I just didn't think it was the right platform to talk about it. I just thought it was weird. Like, if you're in a quarantine zone, do you just get to fly home to whatever country you're from? Like, doesn't that spread the disease? Isn't it better to ride out the issue and pay attention to the quarantine? Like, paramount in a situation like this is containment, right? Like, things don't look contained if people are just flying into different cities and then being allowed to walk around, and or being evacuated by their governments and then being allowed to walk around, especially while considering the next piece of news, right? Here's CTV News. It says officials question report of virus spreading before people are symptomatic. This has been attempted to be downplayed by anybody online. If you talk about this online, I've seen people jump in and say, oh no, that's rumor and that's fear mongering and all sorts of stuff. But it seems that there have been a lot of reports about contagion when and before symptomatic. So that's weird, right? And now CTV News is talking about our officials questioning the reports of the virus spreading before symptoms. So I'm not going to read this right now. I'm just saying I've heard conflicting reports. And if we don't know for sure, is it responsible to just fly into a quarantine zone and fly people out? So, right? It seems crazy. It seems like a bad idea. Here's CTV News again. This is the last one. The Chinese doctor tried to save lives, but was silenced. Now he has coronavirus. I mean, it just sounds, what a nightmare, right? Like, Merry Christmas, or I mean, I guess they don't celebrate Christmas. Happy Lunar New Year, right? Like, terrible. What an awful, awful thing. Here it is. On December 30th, Li Wenlang dropped a bombshell in his media school alumni group on the popular Chinese messaging app WeChat. 7 patients from a local seafood market had been diagnosed with a SARS-like illness and quarantined in his hospital. Li explained that according to a test he had seen, the illness was a coronavirus, a large family of viruses that includes SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome. Memories of SARS run deep in China, where a pandemic in 2003 killed hundreds following a government cover-up. I only wanted to remind my university classmates to be careful, he said. Li, a 34-year-old doctor working in Wuhan, the central Chinese city at the epicenter of the deadly coronavirus outbreak, has told his friends to warn their loved ones privately, but within hours, screenshots of his messages had gone viral without his name being blurred. When I saw them circulating online, I realized it was out of my control and I would probably be punished, Li said. He was right. Soon after he posted the message, Li was accused of rumor mongering by the Wuhan police. He was one of several medics targeted by police for trying to blow the whistle on the deadly virus in the early weeks of the outbreak. The virus has since claimed at least 425 lives and sickened more than 20,000 people globally, including Li. From an intensive care bed in the hospital, Li told CNN he was confirmed Saturday to have contracted the virus. Now, I showed you guys the other day a person talking about the WHO person doing the briefing, the update, and he was talking about how open China was, and basically every time he said something that could potentially be construed as negative about China, he backed it up with 4 things saying China's been great, China's been super open, they've told us about the virus, everybody loves China, China's great, their leadership is wonderful, but this happened, and their leadership is awesome, and everybody's working really hard, and we're going to contain this thing, blah, blah, blah. It's really interesting to now understand that you pull back the cover. And I mean, a doctor working in Wuhan who is aware of SARS, so you would think that he's a respected person, long career, is being punished for telling his friends to be careful, being punished for saying like, holy crap, there's a contagious virus, wash your hands, right? So this is the scary slippery slope that the West is going down right now. This is what the end game is. Right? They want to be able to know if you've warned your friends, and they want to be able to make you think twice about it, because he knew he would be punished. He knew, and he did it anyway. That's a hero. He knew. We're on a path to this. And the people leading the way are the people who are screaming and shouting right now about equality and equity and all that garbage. The woke left. They want this. They want this power to shut people down. It's just frightening. Slippery, slippery slope on display in China right now. Unbelievable. What a world. So wash your hands. Wash your hands. That's all you can do. Got to live our lives. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful